Okay. Taking a big breath. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for what I'm sure will be a very interesting and lively session. Good morning for those of you in this part of the world, and afternoon for those of you further afield. I'm Tricia Hackett, and I'm the Senior Sustainable Urban Development Expert for the IURC program in North America. The IURC program is a global program bringing together EU and non-EU cities to cooperate on topics of sustainable urban development, and is financed by the European Union. This is our second session in the series of cities supporting cities towards a circular economy. That's a mouthful. This series is being delivered in close collaboration with our friends and experts from Fort Collins, a city which is a veteran of the IURC program, and from Metabolic, a Netherlands-based organization who have over a decade of experience advising businesses, governments, and nonprofits around the world in how to thrive in the circular economy. Just to recap, in our first session, so we're in the second one today. In our first session, we heard from a representative from the European delegation to the US on how EU policy is tackling and promoting circular economy. We heard from Fort Collins, who shared their journey on how the city is updating their economic health strategic plan with a first-time focus on circularity. Fort Collins partnered with the city of Vilanova de Famalicão, who we affectionately called VNF, in the first phase of the IURC program, and has been an active participant and learning partner with us ever since. Our friends from VNF have also been actively supporting this webinar series. In the first session, we also had an in-depth and insightful masterclass presentation from Erin Kennedy, who works with Metabolic on circular raw material systems, and Erin is with us again today. Before we go any further, a bit of housekeeping and a request. We'd love to know where you are connecting from. I'm in Medellin, Colombia. So please write in the chat box. We know we have people from different parts of the world. If you want to include your city, organization, title, department, and maybe even say your specific interest in circular economy and the topic. And when you have questions throughout the session, please add them to the Q&A box by clicking the bubble icon at the bottom of your screen. Also, this is really important. If you'd like to ask a question live, which we encourage you to do, we can make you a panelist so that your camera or just your microphone can be activated. So rather than just writing in the Q&A box, we'd love to hear from you live if you're willing and able to do that. In this session, we will hear about and discuss how policies, intervention, and strategies from city government can support industrial manufacturing businesses to implement their circular business practices. We know that many of you in our audience are representing cities from North America and Latin America and the EU. You'll have the opportunity to ask representatives from a diverse range of companies and manufacturers to get a better understanding of what your city can do to support more circular practices. I'm really excited about the panel that we have today. We're really fortunate to have a panel that represents a diverse mix of manufacturer size, industries, and product. But what they all have in common, you won't be surprised, is a strong commitment to sustainability and moving towards more circularity. So I'm going to take a breath. I'm trying to get through this quickly so we can get to the panel part of the exciting part of the session. So now I'm going to introduce our panelists and our moderator, starting with Albertina. Albertina Rice from Riopele. Riopele is a Portuguese virtually integrated textile manufacturer, also a mouthful, who have been supporters of the IURC program and hosted a site visit from a delegation from Fort Collins a few years back. A fantastic visit that we had there. Albertina is a textile engineer and joined Riopele in 1988. Over the years, has had different roles: manager of product, process, and quality engineering, manager of yarn and raw fibers laboratory, and in 2013, she was made director of research and development. And wanted to highlight that one of the R&D projects that she was leading was the rebirth of textiles, which is the new Riopele insignia for fabrics that are 100% recyclable, consolidating the company's commitment towards being an industry leader in sustainability and circular economy. And next we have Dana Villeneuve from New Belgium Brewing Company, the largest craft brewer in the US, who's also been a supporter of the IURC program. And I also, with a delegation from Villanova de Famalicão, had a visit there a few years ago to hear about their sustainability practices. And we got to try a bit of their product too, which was a bonus. Dana leads the government and affairs and advocacy at NBB. In her role, she leverages policy and brand advocacy to create systemic improvements towards a more equitable economy and increase environmental sustainability, including accelerated progress towards the company's science-based climate targets. Next, we have Paul Ford from HP Incorporated, a company you've probably heard of, a global technology company. Paul has worked in the area of environmental sustainability at HP for almost 20 years. His work is involved from ensuring products meet restricted substance regulations to proactively going beyond regulations, reducing the impact that new products have on the environment. Paul's also worked in electronic assembly manufacturing, process development, and before working at HP, he taught at a mechanical engineering college in Sudan in Africa, and a longtime resident of Fort Collins. Welcome, Paul. And the final panelist that I'm going to introduce with the company that has perhaps the most interesting name, no, definitely the most interesting name, is Riley Boyd from Leapin Lizards Labels. And maybe she'll share with us the origin of that name. A Fort Collins-based printing and processing company. Riley is a sustainability coordinator at Leapin Lizards. She's helped Leapin Lizards implement their sustainability initiatives and has sat on several committees, sustainability committees with the city of Fort Collins, which is great to hear. We'd love to see that connection between business and local government. Fun fact about Riley, when she isn't working at Leapin Lizards, she's studying behavior of sharks as a marine biologist. So that's quite a panel. I think you'll all agree. And welcome to you all, and thank you so much for joining us for this session. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Molly Saylor, who will be moderating the panel today. Molly is a lead sustainability specialist with the city of Fort Collins, focused on environmental planning and policy. She's been with the city for 6 years and works on reducing plastic pollution, climate action, circular economy, and environmental justice. Molly is co-leading an update to Fort Collins Economic Health Strategic Plan with a first-time focus on circularity. So, welcome all of you in the audience, our panel, and over to you, Molly, to kick off this amazing panel that we're going to have.
Thanks, Trisha, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. I could also just summarize by saying good day. That was a great introduction, and I think we should all try to integrate more tongue twisters into our bios to just keep everyone on their toes. But as Trisha already mentioned, my name is Molly Saylor. I use pronouns she and her, and I join you all today from Fort Collins, which is the ancestral lands of the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne peoples. So I just want to offer a really brief amount of context for why Fort Collins is so interested in circular economy that we would convene all of these wonderful business partners to ask them questions. So Fort Collins is really in the thick of a planning process that will update our economic health strategic plan. So Fort Collins already works with businesses to increase the economic health of our city. And now increasingly, we want to make sure that economic health is circular. So we're having a first time ever focus on circularity. But as we're working on this, we're realizing there are things cities are getting to know how to do pretty well. We know how to transition to clean energy, provide recycling services, convene stakeholders, run economic development programs. I think there's always more to learn in those, but those feel like areas of comfort for us. What we don't know, we in Fort Collins, and I think most cities, we don't know that much about how to support better supply chains or help our businesses design more circular products. Those things are not in the wheelhouse of at least our city. Maybe they are in yours. And if that is the case, we'd love to connect with you. So this is really what we want to understand from our business panel today. What can cities do to help your business become more circular? We'll have some examples of different things that could include later. But I just want to also say that as we learn things from our business panel today, that will go directly into our planning process. So we're actually asking these kinds of questions through a questionnaire, a survey that's going out to some of our manufacturers locally. But this is the wonderful opportunity for us to go into depth and to get to probe a little bit. What does that mean for you? What could that look like? So this is a really exciting moment for us. And we hear from other cities, they're in the same boat. They're asking themselves the same questions. For example, this is a conversation Andrea from Vila Nova de Famalicão, our partner city, and I have frequently. So my last thing I'll say before I ask the first question is I just want to encourage our panelists to dream big. We love those like really practical small steps that we can take. We want to know those too, but we also don't want to limit your answers. Like really, if you could just have the blank check for cities to deliver for you, what would that be? So our first question is going to just expand a little bit on those great introductions. And I will ask this of each panelist, but it's coming to you, Dana, first. So please, Dana, tell us a little bit about your role and about one circular economy project that you are working on and are really excited about.
Thank you, Molly. And thank you to IURC for convening this series and for the cities of VNF and Fort Collins for convening us. Really excited to be here. As Trisha mentioned, my name's Dana and I work with New Belgium Brewing Company, a craft brewery based right here in Fort Collins. In my role, I am part of our ESG team at the brewery, and we are working to advance our company's commitments and priorities around equity and climate. And we advance those priorities using every tool in the toolbox. We're focused on mitigating our own footprint within our operations, partnering with folks within our supply chain, as is very often the case for manufacturers. About 86% of our carbon emissions come from our scope 3, from our supply chain. So we're always working to figure out the right levers to pull there and the right ways to partner with folks. And my role is really focused on policy and advocacy because so much of that work really requires systemic thinking in order to solve for these issues that are such a scale that us as a mid-sized business cannot solve them on our own, and such a scale that they are, of course, global and systemic problems to be solving for, such as everything to do with the circular economy. Speaking of our carbon footprint, our containers are our single largest source of our emissions for New Belgium, and I think that's very often the case for all breweries. About 42% of our emissions come from our containers. So that's a big issue that we're always trying to solve for, is reducing their footprint and understanding when and where we might be able to return to perhaps a refillable bottle system in North America or other mechanisms to truly reduce the emissions of our containers. Our containers are primarily bottles and cans, glass and aluminum, which are both infinitely recyclable. So we know that there's so much opportunity there to capture all of those containers when they're going into the waste stream and reuse them again and again, or turn into a truly returnable, refillable system. So thanks.
All right, that same question is now going to go to Albertina. So again, it's telling us about your role and one circular economy project that you're working on that you're really excited about.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. From our side is good afternoon. Thank you, Molly. My job, I work at Riopele since I left the university with a lot of different challenge. So at this, since 2013, I'm in charge for all the R&D development at Riopele. And our concerns, we are a vertical company. We produce fabrics for fashion, But the most important apart all our production, we take care about sustainability, not just because of fibers, but sustainability of the process of the entire company. Means what? That since many years that we take care that to reduce all the concerns regarding environments. We take care reducing the consumption of water, consumption of energy, take care of the people that we have involved in all the process. So this is the most important. So we try to fulfill our requirements from the customers to be on the market. So we work with so many different markets. So we have one of the important markets for Riopele regarding the sales of fabrics is Europe. Namely Germany, France, Spain, UK, Denmark, but we will work also with the United States. It's also a very strong and very important market for Riopele. So everything that we do, we try to achieve the goal of the customer of the market. So everything that we do regarding the fibers, we are working with so many different fibers. So try always to use the more natural fibers, the more sustainable fibers with the different process. With the different process, every way is taking care about saving water, saving energy, like I mentioned previously, because this is one of the most important. With that, of course, even when we talk about all this process, and because textile is always looked by the people but like the ugly industry that make a lot of waste, that where there is a lot of consumption and so many waste, because when we produce fabrics there is waste during the process. So with all these things that we have inside of all the process, we have been thinking on all this, and what is the big challenge on the textile? What we can do with all the waste, how we can reduce the waste. Apart all the waste that we have during process, what we can do with all the amount of textile that at the end are not used. So this is the big challenge for textile industry. But what we have already make inside of Riopele is taking care of our waste. Means what? What we decide is to take our waste and try to produce once again yarn. Is work on this waste is not just using the fibers that the market offers, or even producing with the new fibers, but looking in our process, take this waste and to obtain a new yarn to produce new fabrics for fashion. This was a big challenge. Why? Because when you talk about recycling on this process, the yarn is not so pretty, so beautiful, not so beautiful colors that at the end can have a beautiful fabric to present off the market. So we need to study a lot in process to obtain the best performance on this. A lot of developments to try to obtain with this waste interesting yarn that can be, after working in fabrics, to present with a very good collection and pretty collection that can already use it for the fashion industry. And this is the big challenge with what we have already done, that we are in the market with our brand to know. That means textile no waste, the rebirth of the textiles. Is this that we call the circular economy inside of Riopele. Of course, that we are working on this. We're still working on this because it's not a easy work. Why not? Because we have so many different blends. Then this is an issue on textile industry. It is the blends, the different fibers inside of a fabric. What we can do that, how we can make this separation, this split all these different fibers. So the challenge will continue. We will keep doing we keep doing this project. We keep doing these developments. But this is the big challenge for future. How we can take all this waste and transform in a fiber that can be used without any restriction. So we work also with our customers in order to be more closer with that subjects, to transform. Even we are just to talk about pre-consumer, because we're talking about the waste from Riopele, but we are also working now with that we call the post-consumer. We talk about the textile that is already used. So now that is something that we are working. Then this is the big challenge for Riopele and for all that are connecting with the textile, and for future, to prevent, to reduce footprint, to reduce the emissions of carbon. A lot of challenge, and we have embraced this challenge with huge with strong and with very strongly, in order to obtain results on this. Okay, I think.
Thank you. That's perfect, Albertina. And I know that with our next couple of questions, you're going to have lots more ideas too. But I want to go ahead and move now to Paul to hear Paul's response about your role and the circular economy project you're working on that you're most excited about.
Sure, thanks. It's good to be here. My role, I work in a business in HP that manufactures high-end computers, and I'm in the R&D department, and you'll see as I go through some of the things that HP is doing, how my role fits into HP's sustainability strategy as a whole. HP has a goal to be the most sustainable and just technology company in the world, and we do this in three different ways, but I'm going to highlight for you the ways that we're improving our circularity. The first way is that we're dramatically increasing the amount of recycled content in our products. And so in my role, we look for ways to increase the amount of recycled metal, the amount of recycled plastic, and the amount of recycled content in our packaging. We created our company-wide, not just a business-wide, but the whole company sustainability strategy was established around 2018, 2019. So it's pushing all of the businesses to move in the same direction that I just mentioned, the increased recycled content. Since 2019, we estimate that we've recycled 1 billion pounds of content that have been either recycled back into our packaging or our products, metal or plastic. We're voluntarily decreasing the amount of halogenated flame retardants and plasticizers in our plastics. And how does that help with circularity? It makes the materials less toxic to be recycled back into the products, so they're not as dangerous, as well as if eventually they go to a waste stream, they're not as dangerous to society. And we're increasing our take back programs, which is really a fundamental part of our whole circularity strategy. How can we increase the amount of products that we get back? Dana mentioned this also. And how can we refurbish them and design them so that they can actually be redeployed and reused? This helps in multiple ways, but it definitely helps with our improvement in our circularity metrics. One of the programs we're particularly excited about, I'll share with you. We established a couple of years ago what we call an ocean-bound plastic project, and what that is proactively trying to intercept water bottles. You know, the clear water bottles that we all pick up at the convenience store to drink from, intercepting those so that they don't flow into the ocean. We collect these within 50 miles of the ocean. And we partnered with a plastic resin manufacturer to install a facility in Haiti that collects up, is a repository where the plastic bottles can be collected, and then also wash the bottles and grind them up so that they can be transported and combined with other resin that we use in our product. So we're what we like to call it is upscaling the plastic stream so that it goes back into products, and we've been doing that, and the amount that we're using is increasing. Not just the circularity part, but it's helping the economy of Haiti. It provides some few jobs for people to have incentive to collect the bottles, as well as to manage and run the facility that's installed there. So we're particularly pleased about that, and we hope that others would join in.
Well, I think there's a really fun connection between that example and our panelist who moonlights as a marine biologist, which is where we're going next with this question. So Riley, would you go ahead and also just answer this question about your favorite circular economy project that Leapin Lizards is working on, and just a little bit more about your role?
Yeah, for sure, Paul. That was really cool hearing about the ocean plastic thing. I feel like that's constantly what I'm doing with my job. The other job, marine bio. So hi, I'm Riley, pronouns she, her. I'm the sustainability coordinator for Leapin Lizards Labels, which the name is more just, you're never going to forget it. You're never going to forget that mouthful of a name. So it works out really well. We're a small print company based out of Fort Collins, Colorado, so northern Colorado. We work with labels, stickers, and banners. Unlike a lot of you, we're not producing the materials for that. So we're just producing the labels. We get the materials from our suppliers, which is why we're kind of have our second project. But a little bit more about me. I do a bunch of sustainability stuff with the city of Fort Collins as well. Part of my role there is in DEAI, so equity. I'm disabled and queer. So a lot of the panels I'm sitting on are coming from that angle of sustainability to just put in a fresh perspective on sustainability initiatives and making sure they're actually equitable and accessible to all. And then my role with Leapin Lizards Labels is to make a very non-eco-friendly industry as eco-friendly as possible. The print industry is not an eco-friendly one, as a lot of you know, with labels on bottles and containers and stuff like that. They're typically plastic-based because they need to be waterproofed. And then that backing, if you've ever held a sticker or label before, you know that backing has a very waxy coating to it. It's a silicone coating designed so that you pull your label off and you're not peeling your label off of just raw paper, because then you really wouldn't be able to do anything in part of bottling, especially if we work with a lot of breweries, and they need to be able to pull those stickers off fast. So we have to have that silicone backing right now. Suppliers are working on creating a more eco-friendly version. But the issue that we keep running into is recycling plants won't take those papers because of that silicone layer. They're not able to recycle it as well as they can with other papers, where they will basically boil the paper and then pull the fibers from the top. If you do that, you're gonna have a mix of just burnt silicone in there, and you're really gonna lose a lot of that paper fibers that you could be able to recycle. And so to kind of close that loop and bring it back, the circular economic part of it, our project is we're reusing that in shipping material. Backing makes great shipping material. We get calls from all of our clients. They're like, oh, whoa, I'm using this on my other projects. And when we have clients that will send out their containers or their products back to us, it's always with our backing mixed in with it. So it's really easy for us to just be able to pull those right off the press and then put it right back into our shipping department. And then that way we're reusing for shipping, and we're not having to pay and bring in more non-environmentally friendly shipping materials and packaging materials into our system. So that's our big one. And then our second kind of little project that's attached to that are the cores that we use in our rolls are made of a really thick cardboard adhesive mix, because if you have these giant rolls that you're using, you need to have a very solid core that's not going to collapse under that weight. Unfortunately, that adhesive, again, makes it really difficult to recycle. So we reuse most of those cores. And a lot of our local clients will bring those back as well. So we'll constantly reuse our cores as well, including our backing. So that's kind of our little bit of our circular economic project. It's not as major as a lot of these other companies, just because we are a very small company. So we're doing what we can to influence that. But
I think those were all fantastic insights into your different industries, your businesses, your roles. I can really hear the awareness that each of you has about the impacts of your industries and about your role in changing towards a circular economy. So I find that really exciting to know that we have folks like you out there starting to create this change. And I think it's, to Riley, to your point about being a smaller business, that was intentional, that we have some smaller manufacturers and some that are acting globally, because we work as cities with all scales. And I think we often find that small businesses and large businesses, just similarly to when we say, what could a city in Europe have to share with a city in the US or vice versa, often we have more things in common than we realize. So I love all of those examples. And to transition us into our second question, which is going to Albertina first. So Albertina, get ready. But really thinking now about how you each got to where you are. So we know that cities influence businesses in lots of ways. So we pass and repeal regulations that sometimes might help your business, sometimes might hinder your business. We also build infrastructure. We offer economic development support. For example, we convene clusters. There are many more things to do that the cities all work on. So with the things you're already working on, what has your local city, so Albertina, what has Vilanova de Famalicão already done that has helped your business in implementing those circular strategies? Can you give us any examples of how you work with Famalicão to become more circular?
So let me talk completely open. This is my way to work and say, due to the dimension of Riopele, we are, I would say that in Portugal, we are the biggest, one of the biggest one regarding the textile. So we work very closely with Vila Nova de Famalicão. We are located in Vila Nova de Famalicão, and we work, of course, with the mayor of Famalicão and all the team. And we are always working in projects when they ask for support. And also we establish here what concerning the regulation of the town to support us. Of course, we are this partnership, but because we are more looked for export regarding our product is for export. We don't have so many projects together. We have small projects. For example, just an example of today, we have received people from Vila Nova de Famalicão that work on the community, that's to make a project of an artistic project. So they need to do the support of Riopele with using our waste to give the second life to the waste, or to make some things like that. So this is the kind of project where we work with Vila Nova de Famalicão. We work also in the promotion, so we invite always, and this is something that is happen. They are always look at the companies and ask what is the way that they can promote, to communicate what the projects that we are doing for all the community. But I think needs to be more, needs to be done more things than the things that we have, because everything that we are doing is, and we have with a lot of this small project, also with the community around of Riopele, because we are, as I was saying, we are bigger. Look, talking about the community, we are bigger. We have one, it is for Portugal, it is a bigger company, 1,100 people. So there's a lot of small companies around of Riopele that work with us. This link, it's very important to support even the small companies, the way that we work. But regarding the central city, I think we need to do more. We don't have so many. We have small projects, the communication, regarding the legislation that there is for the town, but need to be more strongly. What they can do real, they can influence the government, because it's important that the companies have the same obligations, but the same rights. And normally on the biggest companies, we have a lot of obligations, but we don't have the same rights that the other ones. So sometimes there is some protection for the small ones, but and they can do other things, and we don't have for this side. But we try to really to work together. But one of the important things that we have done with the Famalicão is we create here a center to develop new companies. So we have this, we promote the space. We have the space, the office to receive people that wants to make the startup of. We start all this work with them. We have here Riopele supply all the space, because we are a bigger company. We have space. We support all these things for the startups with the small companies that want a small project and want to start. So this is one of the biggest projects that we have done with Famalicão. Not just on the concept of the textile. So regarding textile, regarding how can we be more sustainable? How can the companies, because when we talk about sustainability in textile, most of the times the people is just thinking about to have a fabric with natural fibers or recycled fibers. There is much more than fibers. There is other things for the business, because the business needs to be sustainable. And the business to be sustainable, there is a lot of things regarding all the process. So regarding the textile, we need to do more. Of course, we have all this connection also with the technical centers here, and all the community is and we have also the cluster. But even regarding the cluster, the textile, to find solutions together, to work together, even on that way, I think it's important to do more. We didn't work really on this subject. We have in the sense of the communication to make the promotion, but the real work still to do.
Thank you, Albertina. And I love sort of hearing the role that your company plays in raising awareness in your community, but I also love the idea of partnering to not just raise awareness in the community, but to also be able to support like other businesses starting up. And I love the idea of the space that you have being one of the assets that you're able to offer in collaboration with your city. So I am seeing this hour is flying by. So I actually am going to add another element to this question as I ask it to our other panelists. So now the question turns from just what has the city done in the past to get you where you are today, but also adding the element like, where do you hope the city can go to support you in the future in that dream big world? So our next person that we're going to turn to for that, since I'm mixing it up here, we are going to have Paul go next, and then Riley and Dana. So Paul, can you take that two-parter of what has the city done so far? And I know you all are in many cities, so it doesn't have to be the city of Fort Collins.
Can you hear me, Molly? Okay, you went on mute real quick. And so I'm going to give an example in Fort Collins. I live in Fort Collins, so that's what I'm most familiar with. And stay with me. I think you'll see what the circularity benefit is here. But Fort Collins recently, in the last 3 years, implemented gigabit Ethernet for all citizens. It's owned by the city. It's affordable, more affordable than the competition, I would say. And how is that? It helps us because it promotes individual residents as entrepreneurs. And when somebody's using a computer in their home, that's good for us as a business. We like that. It attracts people to the city, which we call the Choice City, which we love. But it also promotes workers working from anywhere, not just in the office. Oftentimes, somebody that has high compute needs has to be in the office next to their high-end workstation or computer. and having a higher speed internet that's available to all the people, it promotes equity amongst all citizens of the community. It also allows a person from their phone or from their notebook or any device that they might have anywhere in the world or anywhere in the city to connect to shared resources. And those shared resources then can be managed in creative ways by companies like HP. It allows us to think about how can the right resource be matched with the right user, so that it consumes less. It's the appropriate amount of energy being expended for the person, and it also allows us to reuse equipment in situations because we're providing that service, as opposed to the customer only cares about the service they're receiving, as opposed to whether the equipment was brand new or used. So from a circularity point of view, that really helps us. It really opens things up. It helps us as a company too, from a sustainability standpoint. So it was an expensive venture, and I'm happy that Fort Collins did it. I'll list out a few things if you just want to think big. This isn't necessarily representative of HP's policy or what we intend to do, but I would say we need to think big and transform our culture as a city to not only get back all of our containers, but all of our electronics, that there wouldn't be an option for ever throwing away, that we get them back, we disposition them properly, we either refurbish them for reuse in our populations that are happy using a reused product, or that we recycle them properly so that we're not throwing that waste into the landfill. It's not okay anymore to get back 10% or 20% of that waste that was headed for the waste stream. We need to get it all back. And having the infrastructure to do that is important. Making it easier for citizens to participate in a culture of reuse is also would be helpful. And here's one that I'd like us to consider. We've thought about it, at least some of our big thinkers, is to co-locate businesses that produce heat next to businesses that need heat. And it would be a city planning type thing where, in our case, a computer facility that is known for generating heat could be located next to a greenhouse that needed heat during the wintertime to grow fresh vegetables. So think about that. So those are three ideas, that's the think big ideas that I'd like to throw into the discussion. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. And I actually think the idea of co-locating, that idea, I think creating campuses around all kinds of different waste streams and inputs is a really interesting one that would challenge cities, especially around some of the ways we zone for land use. So I think that's a super fascinating idea, and also love just the idea of cities do provide infrastructure like renewable energy and broadband and recycling systems that I'm hearing from many of you are really crucial in being able to achieve the goals you all have. So next we're going to turn to Riley and then Dana to finish up. I'm sorry if I just switched the order there as I mid idea there, but we're gonna go to Riley, and Dana, you're gonna close us out.
Thank you. Albertina, I have to say I really loved that conversation we were having around fibers and using them in art projects. That's something that we have attempted to do and are still attempting is to have. So when we are running our backing through our cutters, so that's the kind of the finishing process, because we'll run multiple labels on what we call a frame. So we're cutting down as much waste as possible. Often we'll have these thin ribbons of backing that ends up occurring that we still use as shipping material, but we would obviously love to reduce that. And we've had quite a few random art projects result from that really thin backing, but we would love if we could actually funnel it into like an art center or something else where it is being actively reused in art projects. versus just stuffed in nooks and crannies while we're shipping. But yeah, I loved hearing that little piece. And I feel like I'm probably going to be echoing Paul a bit, because City of Fort Collins as well. City of Fort Collins has done a lot around equity and diversity in terms of sustainability. And I think that has been a really interesting experience on our end, coming from a very small company that's family owned, and then having a bunch of very queer and diverse people on our staff. A lot of the times you see these sustainability movements and these recycling movements kind of leave a lot of people behind, and they are really just taking into account larger corporations or people within the community that can afford to be part of these corporations, or to be afford part of the recycling programs and the sustainability programs. So we really appreciate, from Leapin Lizards standpoint, the City of Fort Collins focusing on those communities that are often left behind and making sure that they are also included, because a lot of the time in conservation, and I see this in marine bio all the time, where it's like, here's a great conservation project, and it's like, oh, it might impact that community though. It's fine, we're good. Like it's doing good things, and it ends up having a very negative effect on those communities. So seeing City of Fort Collins kind of ensure that these communities are not being left behind, that they're involved in the process, makes it feel as if things are actually occurring and sustainability movement is actually moving forward. And I'm seeing that a lot, especially with the plans the city has and the plans with some of the organizations in the area, like the Colorado Green Business Network, of ensuring that we're all kind of moving forward and being included in this conversation, I think is really, really important. And our big dream, our big hope is actually a project Molly and I think met on, was the recycling project. Is we would love to see way more infrastructure in our recycling programs and around the city, especially so that we can actually have our labels go through and can have our backing go through. We'll still be reusing it, but to have those extra scraps be actually recyclable and not end up in waste with things that we can't use or clients can't use. The infrastructure is just not there with a lot of recycling plants to take in that waste and to actually truly recycle it. As Paul was mentioning, we're only getting back so much. So that's our big dream, is that the recycling plants actually can take labels and can take more materials, because as we know, plastic, it's about 9% recycled, I think. So to have a program that's actually truly having those go through would be amazing and would solve a lot of issues, and would allow us to really make sure everything coming from our facility is either being reused and brought back into our loop, or is actually being properly recycled so that other organizations and communities can use it. I think those were the two questions. Cool. So
two-parters are sometimes hard to remember, but you did it beautifully. And Dana, hopefully I gave you a little extra time to think, which I know you probably didn't need, but can you close us out on this question? And then I think we will check in where we're at on time.
Okay, I'll try and be efficient so that we can get to some Q&A. I'd love to hear from folks on the call. Special shout out to the city of Ottawa, Ontario. I saw a few people in the chat saying they were from there. Both of my parents are from right outside of Ottawa, so I've got Canadian roots, and I love that place. Anyway, I guess to back up, I was talking about containers being a larger source of emissions, and as a company, I mentioned we're trying to pull all of the different levers, and that's looked like everything from lightweighting our glass bottles, making them as light and thin as possible while still being sort of structurally sound and meeting our quality requirements to reduce their footprint to begin with. We're also trying to do things like collaborate within our industry, of course, to create change that we cannot ourselves. So we founded something called the Glass Recycling Coalition several years ago that's investing in expanding recycling infrastructure in many cities across the country, across North America. And we're also, of course, always trying to use the lever of policy to affect change on something like recycling infrastructure. And there's two big mechanisms for container recycling, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. One is extended producer responsibility, and the other is container deposit laws. So we're big fans of both of those. They both serve different roles, and they can, work in tandem with one another really well. And just this past year, the state of Colorado passed a producer responsibility law that will apply to containers, will apply to our glass bottles and our aluminum cans. And we advocated loudly for it. There was sort of a mixed response from producers such as ourselves, who will be footing the bill for having systems in place that help ensure that less and less of these recyclable materials end up in the landfill. It's always surprising and upsetting to hear how big those percentages are of glass and aluminum that are not getting recycled when they're so infinitely recyclable. But we, advocated loudly for that to pass and really engaged in that process. And, I think that's a perfect example of a place that the city of Fort Collins has shined, because the city was also very involved in that process. A person from the city is sitting on the advisory council for the producer responsibility program in the state as it's starting up right now. And, the city recognizing the opportunity there is really, really vital to us, to us seeing progress and seeing a policy end up being designed in a way that is really effective for not only reducing our collective footprint and avoiding materials ending up in the landfill, creating that circular economy, but also just thinking about the overall benefits to communities far and wide. And I think that one of the things that is really beneficial for us, for cities to be thinking about, is to sort of have as much of a grasp as possible on how all of the different programs can layer upon one another. Even Fort Collins, even New Belgium, which is sort of a mid-sized business, we really lack the capacity, I think, sometimes to understand how local programs and incentives layer upon state programs, layer upon federal programs. How do they complement one another? Sometimes it seems like the requirements for them or the parameters for them are vastly different. So any opportunities that there are to sort of streamline how those programs are designed and really be thinking about how something that the city is putting forth or local municipality is putting forth can really complement what the state and the federal government are doing in order to, accelerate the recyclability of containers or accelerate the adoption of renewable energy or whatever it is. I think that's really, really beneficial to us. And then as far as dreaming big beyond that, I think, I loved Paul's thoughts there, and just, solving for something as small and simple as changing Americans' appetite for for simple disposable products and quick access to everything it's just a small thing that we can all quickly solve for. But finding ways to collaborate on building more reuse into our systems is really an excellent place for us to all be aiming toward.
All right, well, I am going to do a quick check of our Q&A here. We have a question specifically for Paul. Our audience member is curious if you are aware of the Extended Producer Responsibility Act that I think, and we'll see if this is correct, but Dana was just mentioning that one is specific for packaging, and seeing if that has changed HP's processes at all, or if something like if an extended producer responsibility would sort of impact your business if it I think let me read the question and then let me see. So the question is, they're curious if you're aware of the Extended Producer Responsibility Act and how it's changed HP's processes or approach with sustainability. Why I stumbled over that is I'm not sure it actually applies to you all, but maybe you can tell me more. But I'm also curious if that concept resonates with you. And I think that this might actually, this might actually be our last question and answer before we start wrapping into themes. But why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your thoughts on extended producer responsibility?
I have not heard of the Producer Responsibility Act, so I'm not sure what the details are. So I'm not sure how I could respond. I could just speculate.
I just let Kira talk. So maybe Kira, if you can give us just a brief sentence about what that is, so Paul can answer the question. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So, Paul, the Extended Producer Responsibility Act, others were just mentioning it, but it's a new act going in place in Colorado that will, it looks at packaging, and I want to make sure I get this right, but in a nutshell, it holds the producers of goods more responsible for the packaging materials that come along with the distribution of their goods and services, or their goods. And so it actually has a cost associated with it that is applied to the producer, as opposed to having the consumer of the product bear all of the burden for the recycling or disposal of that content. So it pushes responsibility for packaging further upstream to where it starts rather than where it ends. And
so I think I have enough. I can say what HP is doing as an example. So in communities, almost all our communities have some sort of curbside recycling process, and oftentimes we put things into that bin that are recyclable, but the city does not have the capability to actually recycle some of those things. And in the case of computer packaging, we often have some sort of plastic cushions, we used to at least, that held the product safely in place during shipping. Unfortunately, those are completely recyclable, but unfortunately, hardly anybody has the equipment that can actually recycle them. So we've moved from plastic cushions to a molded pulp. It takes less energy to actually form those cushions, and they are completely recyclable, just like any other corrugated in a cardboard that we put in our bins. So that's an example how we proactively are moving towards a packaging material that performs as well, but is completely recyclable. The other piece is eliminating plastic bags, which notoriously are harder to decide how to recycle, reducing the amount of packaging that we have. So those are things that we proactively do, independent of what the new Colorado Act that you referenced, Kira. In many parts of the world, EU in particular, HP contributes proportionally to the recycling services. Proportionally, the amount that we ship into the EU, we actually pay in a certain amount to make sure that there are recycling facilities to recycle our equipment and our packaging.
All right, well,
sorry, we don't have more time for others to respond.
Oh,
thanks for the question.
We could absolutely all spend another day, 2 days. We could have a conference on this. And I think there would be so much more to dig into. And I do want to just share a couple of themes that I have heard today of what cities could be doing to support businesses. So I'm hearing partnering around awareness and that culture change, both for residents and how they see reuse, but also for other businesses and acting as a mentor to other businesses. I heard all kinds of ideas, from art projects to incubation spaces to leading industry organizations for change. I also heard that cities having good infrastructure and improving that is really important for businesses to achieve their goals. So strong recycling systems, renewable energy, broadband, and more. I also heard that cities helping to make the transition to a circular economy just and equitable, so that it is not a sort of sole outcome situation, but that we really can be in a more vibrant and just future that is circular. I also heard that cities and businesses can get a lot done if they partner together to work on policy change at higher levels of government. That was something Dana was mentioning around the Extended Producer Responsibility Act. And I think there's a lot more available there too. And similarly, the cities could help navigate and streamline programs that are at different layers of government so that businesses can make better use of the sort of offerings available to them to become more circular. And then I think that we heard some really interesting themes around land use and zoning changes so that businesses and different uses of materials and energy could co-locate to actually really be able to grow the veggies for the campus using the off heat, or maybe to use a waste output for another production process for another company. And that certainly would be something cities would have to lean into. So I'm sure there are more themes, and I know we didn't get to everything, but we would like folks to jot down their key learnings from today. So if you joined us last time, you know we used the Miro board, and we have a workspace in the Miro board for each of the cities. And in that workspace, if you can find it again, click the link, find your city's name, and then there is a sticky note for each city that says my top 3 takeaways. We'd love if you can just take a moment to jot those down, because we are going to offer an additional workshop to connect the ideas that folks brought in the first workshop to what we learned from this business panel today. So we don't want anyone to lose these really good ideas we heard today. We want to actually deepen the conversation around that. So the workshop that we'll be offering, we're working on the date for that now. So keep an eye on your inboxes for the invitation. And we'd love to share back with our panelists what cities end up developing from the conversation today. So as we see examples, we'll share those back. And Trisha, I'll let you go ahead and close us out. Thank you for all of our panelists from my side.
Well, Molly, you did a great summary. Thank you so much. So the only thing left for me is to say a very big thank you. It's a wonderful session, and there's never enough time, but particularly in this session, it just flew by. It was such great contributions from all of our panels. So thank you to Molly and your colleagues in Fort Collins for taking the lead. It's very special for us to have a city actually leading on this initiative, this series, hearing directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and the perspective that you have working in this every day when you roll. So thank you so much for your very able moderation and insights there. And of course, to the wonderful panel that we had, Dana, Paul, Albertina, and Riley, your fantastic contributions. Also to Andrea Mafra, who helped us secure Albertina is here today, and our long-term partner in VNF. We're lovely to have you, as always. And this has been an experiment for us. It's the first time we're doing taking a theme as a series, and it feels really good to be able to build, and that people are coming back. And then in the next session, we will have Erin Kennedy back from Metabolic to lead a workshop and kind of really roll up our sleeves and dive into some more of these topics. And finally, of course, the rest of the team. Not finally, because there's 2 more. The rest of the team at the IURC, all behind the scenes, who make all of this happen, and then of course the audience. So I know you're all really busy, but it's great that you've taken the time to join us here today. So that was a very long-winded but important thank you to you all for your time and good intentions, and of being here, and for all your great work and making this world more sustainable, circular, and just. So looking forward to seeing you in the next session and future sessions, and have a good rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.